What did the Bank of Canada say in 2020 that infuriated so many people that took on too much debt? And did the Bank of Canada sign on the dotted line for their mortgage? And what did they say in 2021 that nobody is talking about and you will not hear in the mainstream media? Realtors, mortgage brokers on YouTube aren't talking about it. And I don't know why, but I think it's because that they just want to show that they have empathy for people who are in these situations where they're about to default on their mortgage or they're already defaulting on their mortgage in terms of a shadow default. So we're going to go through what the Bank of Canada said in 2020 and what they said in 2021 and also what's going on right now. So let's get right into it.
We're telling Canadians, and our forward guidance has been very clear that we're going to hold our policy interest rate at the effective lower bound until slack is absorbed, so that we can sustainably achieve our 2%.
So notice that he said we're going to hold interest rates at the lower bound. This was back in 2020 until inflation reaches our 2% target, until the slack in the economy as they define it is absorbed, which happened. That actually happened. So you would actually, if you just heard that statement alone, think that interest rates are going to rise, right? Yet every time the Bank of Canada comes out with a rate hike or they're even in the news, you see it trending on Twitter and people going absolutely mad and playing this video that I'm playing you right now. But what you won't believe is what they said in 2021, and we're also going to show on the actual housing price charts how nobody listened to that. So you can really become more clued up on this when you hear about it and you know that these people are just trying to defer responsibility or blame somebody else for their poor financial decisions. So let's continue here.
Inflation target, and we've indicated that's not going to happen into some time into 2023. So what does that mean? Yes, it means that if you're a household considering making a major purchase, if you're a business considering investing, you can be confident that interest rates will be low for a long time.
So there you go. He says that you can be confident that interest rates will be low for a long time. That's pretty vague. He said about 2023, but he also said about inflation reaching their 2% target and about the slack in the economy being absorbed, which happened in 2021 essentially. And then 2% inflation target was met too. So they took way too long to even increase rates by their standards. And the public is out there. Most people, mainly the people who took on too much debt and are now on the verge of default, are looking for somebody to blame. And it's a problem we have in society today, is that everybody just looks for people to blame for their own mistakes. But the problem is, when you look at actually what happened in 2021, it's not what they are saying. They are completely ignoring this. It's like the people that hear what they want to hear and then they just put earmuffs on and they don't hear anything else. No, I'm not going to listen to you now. And that's exactly what happened, because in 2021, here the Bank of Canada is warning that interest rates are going to rise or may need to rise, and warning about excessive exuberance in the housing market, which was apparent at the time and just got worse, continued to get worse. But nobody listens to these warnings and nobody even discusses these articles apart from me. So it just kind of shows that people listen to that one video in 2020 and then they're just like, that's it, I'm not listening to the Bank of Canada anymore. Anyways, Bank of Canada warns buyers of early signs of overheating in the housing market. This was in February 2021, guys, when they came out with this. So I just want to show you on a chart to show you where property values actually were. So this is a nice chart by listing.ca for Toronto. So if you look at this, detached homes in February 2021 were selling for 1.163 million. At the peak, they were selling for 1.435 million. So they went up loads. They went up over 30% between the time the Bank of Canada said that. And then they came out again in May of 2021 and gave another warning. So it just kind of shows that people didn't listen to what they actually said. They only listened to that first thing they said, and then they just used that as an excuse. And it's childish almost that I see this sort of behavior on Twitter, but this is the society that we are unfortunately living in, guys, where nobody wants to take any responsibility for their actions whatsoever. And it is just shocking and disturbing that people, don't take any ownership for what they actually do in life. So anyway, Bank of Canada warns of early signs of overheating in housing market. So I'll just whiz through this quickly. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem so far has no plans to raise interest rates until the economy and employment are back on track following the slump caused by the pandemic, which was done in 2021. The economy would continue to need monetary stimulus likely until 2023, but he didn't say that for sure, even though there are already signs it could be distorting the residential real estate market. In that low for long world, there are risks that housing could get carried away, so that is something that we will be looking at very carefully. And obviously they were. Housing did get carried away. Some observers have already expressed worries that the Canadian housing market is rising at an unsustainable pace, leaving critics, including some in the real estate industry, nervous of a boom, followed by a devastating bust once interest rates finally start to rise. This was in February 2021, and they're already talking about interest rates possibly rising. So there you go. That is proof there in their statements where they were saying interest rates were going to be low for a long time. It was really just until 2023 if you were to put them to an exact date, but a lot of their statements were very vague, and it was also dependent on data, things like inflation, employment, the usual things that the Bank of Canada is targeting, but people just ignore those. You know, if people wanted to know what was going to happen, they only needed to look at inflation in 2021. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. Even I came out in 2021 and I was saying they need to raise rates now. And of course they didn't until 2022. They were miles too late, and they'll be miles too late when they cut rates. And the devastating impacts of all this, all the bad things that the Bank of Canada does are terrible. And I do not support the Bank of Canada. I don't support the government either. I believe the Bank of Canada isn't really, you know, a separate entity really. So I believe it's corrupted in that way. And it was obvious during the pandemic that the Bank of Canada is completely corrupt and just doing what the government wants them to do. So I'm not supporting the Bank of Canada, but I am supporting the fact that they were very vague and they came out with warnings in 2021 that nobody listens to. In fact, the whole purpose of why I'm bringing out this video and doing this live stream right now is to show you how people, the herd in particular, just do not want to take accountability and ownership for the bad decisions that they make. And it kind of shows you that we are doomed to make these same mistakes. You know, if you don't take ownership for what you do in life, you're just going to keep making mistakes, which is repeating the same thing over and over, as Warren Buffett says, is the definition of insanity. So these people are defined as insane by his standards. And it really is, because, you know, you are not taking ownership. You're doomed to repeat those same failures that you've had this time around. So it's kind of crazy. And then not just that, guys. Again, the Bank of Canada in May comes out and they warn. So I've highlighted there, May 20th, 2021. Bank of Canada warns home buyers rates will eventually need to rise. And then you come down here, Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem said recent gains in home prices are not sustainable and warned households against taking on too much debt because interest rates will eventually rise. He literally warned of that, and then it happened. So, you know, the Bank of Canada gets a lot of things wrong, but they got that right and they warned of it. But nobody on Twitter is talking about that. No, we're just going to talk about 2020 and pretend like 2021 didn't happen. And I find it utterly hilarious. And it just shows you the mania that we were in during 2020 and 2021, the psychological mania that people were in. It's just like they're blinded by their greed and stupidity and fear of missing out to see what's actually going on, because you can have different views of the world just based on what you want your outcome to be. If your outcome is to buy a home at any cost, then you're probably going to avoid narratives that conflict with that, like this one. And that is just the fact of what we do as humans. It's very incredibly interesting. And yeah, it's just kind of crazy. So Macklem said some households have taken on significantly more debt, with many carrying very large mortgages relative to income. Borrowers and lenders need to understand that interest rates won't always be at historic lows, and home buyers won't be able to rely on rising values. So he literally came out and said it, guys. He said that you can't rely on home values rising, which is this greater fool theory, which so many people rely on in Canada, because if you look at the rental market in nearly every major city across Canada, most landlords are cash flow negative. They were cash flow negative though in 2021, and it's because they weren't buying as an investment, they were buying it as a speculation on the future price growth, and all these narratives that the mainstream media spins, that the politicians spins, that it's all population growth, it's only population growth, it's only immigration, housing prices are just going to go up infinitely, is entirely stupid, as we've discussed, because it's not just about population growth and immigration, as I've brought up this chart a lot recently, but it's to drill it home that it's about housing affordability. And you can see how in the past where, we've actually had massive amounts of immigration, where we've had massive slowdowns in the building of homes, you've seen markets also get euphoric as well, like in the 70s. And you've also seen where you've had massive swings in population and housing prices haven't done anything. So of course it's contributing factor, but it's not the only factor. And you just have to look at the rental market as evidence of that, because rents can't go up infinitely because people's incomes, they can't afford to pay that rent. A lot of the people who have these mortgages are paying the mortgages with other forms of debt right now, which is just a recipe for disaster. But what I just wanted to drill home here is, the average person is just completely asleep, completely ignoring everything that happened in 2021 and just focused on what they said in 2020. And you will see all kinds of realtors, mortgage brokers, I've seen it here on YouTube even, where they're like, the Bank of Canada, they're the ones to blame. They came out and said rates are going to be low for a long time. Okay, what is a long time? It's very, very vague. And then what about in 2021 when, everybody was going nuts and they were warning that rates were going to rise? Everybody ignored that. And I just want to show you that because you'll hear that a lot. And it illustrates that we were in this mania, which is typical. What you see at the end of a bubble is this mania, this blow off top, this kind of melt up phase, which is exactly what we saw. And we saw that narrative get pushed that, you couldn't lose on housing. And then in 2022, we had record housing price declines, and we also had record population growth, which absolutely contradicts with the narrative that population growth is the main cause of why home prices are rising. It's speculation, guys. You only have to look at the Airbnb growth in every major city to realize that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one. It was interesting to go through. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, you might like this video here. You might like this playlist here. If you are looking for a VPN, you know where to go. Go to expressvpn.com/marketmania. That's my VPN and the one I use. Thank you so much for watching. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to serve you, and I'll see you in the next one.